to the show.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Off the Mats podcast. And this week on the podcast, I always say this week, but I talk to multiple people throughout the week, so maybe that feels a little weird to me. So today on the podcast, I want to welcome a grappler, and a grappler that, like most grapplers that I'll have on, we're just like strictly grapplers. It's like, hey, we do jiu-jitsu, or we do jiu-jitsu and collect comics or things like that. Whereas this grappler we have on, it kind of fits into, I guess, I've been talking to a few mindset guests as well, some that have not been grapplers. So I want to talk today to Miss Erin Herle, who is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, who also is, hold on, I got notes here, y'all. She is a certified mental performance consultant. Dude, I am so proud that I got all four of those words. And also, she's my guest today. So, Miss Erin, welcome to the show. And how are you?
Thank you. I'm great. Yeah, it is a mouthful to have to say certified mental performance consultant because, and it's easier to say CMPC, but then people are like, what's a CMPC? And then they go, where do you get the CMPC from? And then I have to say, the Association of Applied Sports Psychology. And so therefore I am a certified mental performance consultant under the Association of Applied Sports Psychology. And I'm also a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. So lots of words to describe someone who likes to beat people up and figure out why people do what they do.
I mean, at least like with the beat down, it's like, now let me ask you some questions while I have you here in this bow and arrow choke. Can I just tap first?
I haven't done that hybrid yet, actually. Because I normally take a very compassionate approach to my clients of like this, unconditional positive regard. And not that I don't treat my training partners the same way, but definitely I think it would be difficult to beat up my clients while also asking them, like, what are their core values? What do they care about most? They'd probably be like, breathing, tap. I don't know how productive it would be.
I know I get kind of poked at because I'm the talker on the mat, and I do it a lot out of nervousness. So like if I'm in a bad spot, I giggle or I'll start to sing. And most folks that I train with now, they're used to it, so they just know, like, Dante's singing again. Sounds like it's Purple Rain this time. He must really be scared. But
oh my God, we have so much in common. I have he was 13. I think I just saw that his birthday. It was an old training partner, actually, in kickboxing. And he was like a kid actor, so just very outgoing and just like wise. And we were doing a wrestling class. We watched the move and then went to go partner with him. And I couldn't stop talking. And what you're talking about in terms of the nervousness, it's like a fawning, which is like almost not a people pleasing, but also it could be seen as like a stim of like a verbal. As long as I'm talking, I feel better. And it's like a regulator, right? And so I went to go do the move with him and I couldn't stop talking. And he's like 13 years old and he looks at me and he goes, do you just talk because like you don't know how to be silent? And like you're uncomfortable? And I was like, yes. And like I had no reason to be uncomfortable at all. I just make up things in my head to be uncomfortable about, which I think is maybe part of it. But I felt so called out and I felt so seen by such a young kid. But I've also had situations where I'll be in the bullpen and I'll feel the need to talk to my opponent so that I don't build them up too much in my head. So like I have this one time I competed against someone first round, no gi pans, no gi world. We got to be the first match as well. It was both like IBJJF, so they're pretty important. And then I get into the bullpen and I literally said to her, I go, so we meet again. She just looked at me like I was insane and didn't say anything. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go take that loss. And then I ended up losing to her again. And I don't know if that was part of it, but yes, talking is definitely a regulator on many fronts for me too.
Yeah, I always wondered about that because, again, on the mats, I always kind of sense that I'm nervous, especially like I said, when I'm in danger, I laugh. It's like someone to get
God
like,
save.
the other day we're doing like a mock match at the end, and I'm going against one of our purple belts, a gentleman that I've known for a long time. We've rolled together many a time, so we know each other's move sets. He got my back. Didn't let him get the hooks because I was aware that we had two newer blue belts coaching us, and our coach is kind of overseeing that. So, and he's keeping track of score. So I'm like, okay, well, I know I'm not giving up points, but as I'm not giving up points, now he's starting to choke me. And of course, I felt secure that I can still, defend, but I start giggling really loud, and then I give a thumbs up. And in my mind is like, I hope that distracts him enough to make him let go, which it did. I was like, yes, it works. It's got to work on everyone. I think that's why I do it, because it's like it'll work on some, but there are those competition grapplers in our gym that they're like, oh, you're laughing? Okay. Well, and I'm like, oh no, I'm sorry. I don't do this with you guys too often. Let me reintroduce myself. I'm Dante, and I'm a casual. I'm a hobbyist at best. Like, you want to be on my podcast?
Right. My husband, actually, when I met him, I was already a black belt and he was a blue belt. He's a brown belt now. But when I would roll with him, I'd obviously like beat the shit out of him. And he is 6'3", kind of a lanky guy, and everything hurts. Like he gets his darces and they are just like ouchie. I nicknamed him like Blades, which makes sense because he's a barber too. But he would giggle every time I was getting something good on him. And it was really annoying because for me, I'm like, that's so disrespectful. Like you're mocking me. Or I also realized, well, you're also so uncomfortable being beat by me that's that nervousness, right? And that nervous giggle. And so at first I hated it. And now he's gotten so much better and it gets really, really hard to beat him up. And he actually beats me up in some ways. So it makes me miss the giggle at this point because it's very few and far between that I'm putting him in situations that he can't figure out. But it definitely was an interesting thing for the giggling. But I mean, I have made my name kind of synonymous with humor and laughing. And I think, BJJ Mental Models, when I was on one of the podcast episodes, I said, if you're not farting in training, or if you've never farted in training, you've never trained hard enough. And, obviously that's in jest, but it's funny, it's humorous, facetious. And it's an idea that humor is a great way to mitigate awkwardness. And jiu-jitsu is a lot of awkwardness. And especially me being a female, it's much easier to laugh something off with someone than to feel the sting of shame, right? So it's a way to mitigate that like shame, or even the, I guess, anticipated shame, right?
Yeah.
But it's definitely a key, because laughing is an automatic nervous system reset, which is really interesting too, because as we go into a shame spiral and we have self-talk and we have all of these negative emotions and experiences or thoughts that are ruminating in our head, it's a way of getting a reset button. And sometimes just finding the absurdity in something, like when I get to remind myself that, like, if I zoom out from, the mat, and everything, and like the jiu-jitsu, and that nobody really knows what jiu-jitsu is. So here I am, getting like osteoporosis and arthritis and dementia in the future, just so that I could roll around with sweaty dudes. And when I remember that absurdity of it all, then I continue laughing. And of course, other people don't look at laughing as a sign of seriousness or dedication or like commitment. So I've actually created that saying, like, how bad do you want it, has just become complete satire, right? Because I feel like I'm okay of saying that because I lived my life with, oh my God, jiu-jitsu is everything. I am, a college student. I have been in a band before. My mom loves me. Like, I have all these great things, but I am nothing unless I win jiu-jitsu tournaments. And so then I created this whole persona of like, I'm worth nothing. And if I compete and I lose, which is so easy to happen given all the things that we can't control, and I really had my self-esteem tied into it, I've also taken that route of being way too serious with myself and way too serious on the mats and way too serious with my goals. And so now humor is almost like a way of coming back to myself and owning that experience, because I know what it's like to put all my eggs in one basket and just like sob and weep, thinking that me as a total human is just not good enough, when in reality it was like judging a goldfish by its ability to walk, right? It was just, I wasn't giving myself enough credit to think outside the box, to be like, wait, you're actually a good human, and that's not a lot. That's saying a lot for a group of jiu-jitsu champions that can't always say that, right? Being good at jiu-jitsu and being a world champion is not always synonymous with being a good human. And so it helped me learn that, like, if I'm laughing and you don't think I'm serious, that's okay, because this is my way of doing it in a way that serves me and probably serves a lot of other people, and prevents us from taking yourselves too seriously with like murdering simulation in pajamas.
Dude, less than 15 minutes in, and you just like tapped into a whole bunch of things up here in me, because
oh yeah,
I'm like, it makes sense.
Going. My job. My job is talking. My job is literally having conversations with people and trying to get either to like the root of why they think something or the experiences they've had, and trying to frame them in a more productive light. And people come to me for all different reasons. A lot of it is like lack of enjoyment or performance anxiety, or both. And so my job is to help them realize that they choose to do this. They're accepting, the necessary inherent dangers of, possibly getting hurt, feeling embarrassed, comparing ourselves to someone, being in a hierarchy, and, feeling inferior to other people, all of that cultural bullshit. But it's important for me to understand what someone thinks is their reality and the story that they tell themselves, so that I can meet you where you're at, instead of being like, no. I don't care what you are thinking. This is what you should think, right? Like, I'm not here to inject things. I'm here to guide and facilitate and to pull it out of someone. And the way that you do that is usually with the first thing is open-ended questions. And so usually you talking about things triggers me to start thinking about how this connects. And then I start, and then your brain starts, and then a podcast happens, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Oh, it's a dance. You say one thing, I react. Now here's my step, and then you react, and there's your step. I like it. And like you said, it's a podcast. That's how most podcasts would be really boring if I ask you, so do you like jiu-jitsu? Yes or no? Versus what is it about jiu-jitsu that you like? And that opens up so much more, and then guides from there to another, step in the dance and everything. Not that I could dance or anything, but
same.
What I go with, I like to go there.
The fact that you can run so many podcasts just proves that you would be a great certified mental performance consultant under the Association of Applied Sports Psychology, if you ever wanted to. Of course, you'd have to get a master's, do all these other things. But being a coach or a consultant is very, very similar. Actually, I would say consultant is more like I talk at you of like what I think you should do, because that's what you want. But coaching is usually like bringing it out of someone, and me being able to see what your strengths are and taking a strengths-based approach, which is direct from positive psychology, Martin Seligman. And it's not about ignoring the weaknesses, but it's just about championing the strengths. And why it works so well for jiu-jitsu is because we always have opposition. And it could be a technical opposition. It could be a strength opposition. It could be a strategy or a tactic or intimidation. It could be all these different things that we're dealing with in jiu-jitsu, and it's so unexpected. So I think really it comes down to being able to be psychologically flexible, and to take in the experiences, and also know that it is your game that matters. However, to just simply say, just do your game, just do your game. It's like, I'm trying so hard. A coach is like, pass the guard. And you're like, no shit, please. I am trying so hard. Yeah. Right. And I have plenty of, pictures of me with like sass on my face. Cause like, that's my immediate reaction, is just like, can you give me something else? But knowing your strengths is knowing your playbook. Right. And one of the things I do with my clients is building an inventory of their moves. I wouldn't give it to absolutely everyone, because some people are already on that side of the spectrum in terms of being too analytical. And I need to bring them back into the somatic and be like, can you just like trust yourself and stop overthinking it? But for others, it creates a menu so that when you're in a certain position or situation and you are, let's say, on bottom, you've got a minute left and you're down by 2 and you just need to sweep, or maybe even have the advantage, you need to think about, what sweep am I going to do? Obviously, the situation, depending on how your opponent is, if they're on their knees versus they're standing versus they're in a passing position versus they have dominant grips, all of those change. But essentially, jiu-jitsu is about creating patterns of corralling someone into your game. So I need to know, for me, for example, I'm either going to go spider and I'm going to sweep with just your regular kind of scissor sweep from there, or balloon sweep overhead, or I'll use, De La Hiva and I'll try to go from there, or I use X guard and I get under. So really, when you're able to kind of think about what your game and the situations that you find yourself in based on personality, body type, experience, influences, instructional, like you name it, all that influences where you find yourself. And that is where people will be like, oh, but I want to be a leg locker. I want to be this. And it's like, yeah, but like you're a deep half guy, like that's where you are. So it's almost accepting kind of what your body allows and what your personality allows and going with it, rather than saying, oh, I'm a lanky guy, I'm going to watch, Adam Marzinski and I'm going to do everything he does. And it's like, I'm not trying to regurgitate or do anything. So really knowing your strengths is being able to have reflection skills and self-awareness to be able to say what is working and what's not. And then I'll go from there. Not just, I'm going to pick this thing off the tree of like, I want to be good at this. And it's like, yeah, but like that meme where it's like the guy trying to grab something and like the red guy and he's pulling him away.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, yeah, but you have little legs. You can't do that, or like, yeah, but you always find yourself in deep half. So or whatever it is. So it's strength-based is really a hot topic, I think, for jiu-jitsu in terms of an oppositional transactional dynamic sport.
I had a teammate who he was a tall guy, long legs, long arms. And whenever he and I would work together, he'd always tell me like, no, you have to do it like this. And it was like, well, dude, I have little bitty arms and little bitty legs. Like, I can't do that. Like, I can get there, just not as easy as you can get there, to the point where I was like, you know what? I don't know. I just want to learn that so I could defend it. I don't think I'm going to be doing what you're doing. But now that I know that you like to do that, I got you. But I'm going to go ahead and just smash you and just, get the pass instead of doing all this, extra stuff that you're doing with your longer limbs. And I do find that with myself, I always have to remind myself, mid-roll, like, wait a minute, like you can do this, and you're trying to do things that your body isn't. And it's not that, I can't do it. It's just a little extra work to do it. And I was like, well,
it's upstream.
Path of least resistance. So it's like, let me go that way.
And absolutely. That's how I am with my passing. I'm just kind of like wherever it takes me. But there's a saying in Portuguese that you might hear some coaches tell their students or competitors, and they'll say, "Tá em casa," like you're at home, meaning like usually it's close guard, I think, because like there's certain specialists that are like close guard. But like, for example, if I got my spider guard I would definitely have a coach telling me ta in casa, because like that's like my first guard. That's something that I could do in my sleep. That's something that I do regularly. It just fits me. It's where I go. So to be at home, ta in casa, you're at home, means that you're in your game. And here is where, you know, I feel it means relinquish your doubts. Don't hesitate, because there's less risk here, because it's something that you know. And really it's about trust. And that's actually something that I have in one of my frameworks that I work on with my clients. It's like the last thing after self-awareness, regulation, adaptability, recovery is trust. And what that looks like is different for every person. Sometimes trust means surrender. Sometimes trust means this is where you thrive. Sometimes trust means let go and give it your all without fearing what the consequences are. Or it could be like just a comforting thing of like a trust, like no matter what happens today, the outcome does not define me, and I am a whole person despite this sport, and my performance is within it. But essentially it does mean that if you do not, even if you've done all the work and you still are hesitating and overthinking, it really is the fact that you've done the whole process. Just focus on the process, trust the process. And so it's been interesting, because when I work with my clients, like I work in a situation of isolation where I read the research, but the research is never written for my clients. The research is written for, some Turkish wrestling club who they had one maybe 6-week program of self-talk, right? And they might have found some positive findings that self-talk works in, wrestling, right? So wrestling is an adjacent sport. So then I might take that and apply it to an intervention for my client, but I don't know that it's going to work. There's no such thing as like proven in research, because even the best knowledge that we have from certain research that's been cited so much can't necessarily be replicated. So everything I'm doing with my clients is not just guesswork, but it's an experiment, and you just have to try it. And the reason why that works so well for jiu-jitsu people is because a lot of what we do is experimenting. And when you get to the highest level, or just like even just a mid-range level, if you want to call it that, like your first pass is not necessarily going to work. You have to be able to chain things. You have to be able to recognize and adapt in the moment. It's not just some programmed, I do spider guard sweep, I get on top like we wish, or I like to call it caveman of I go up, you go down, right? Like I don't care what it looks like, because sometimes my clients will be very, very particular about how pretty it looks, or that they want to maintain the right, quote unquote, right technique. I'm like, okay, whatever that means. And I'm like, yo, just do what works. Like that's where the wrestle up came from, right? It was like, there's no technical wrestle up. It's literally just, I don't know, man, get to your knees and start grabbing shit and drive, like it can be that simple.
Yeah, that's where my brain gets kind of stuck sometimes, is, and I've gotten better. I've gotten out of it. There's this whole thing like it's got to look a certain way. And I got to a point where I was just kind of like, you know what, just, get the sweep, like get the pass, get the things. And when I came back, because my previous job, my schedule just wasn't conducive to training. And once I got back to where at least I could train on the weekends, there's a little bit more fluidity there. There's, some classes at times where I was like, okay, I can get into any of these. So it's like, okay, now that I think I'm back, I'm going to go ahead and do some private lessons. And we worked on guard passing, and then where to go from there. And it was never really, initially it was kind of like, okay, look this way, make it look this way, just kind of in drilling. I was like, okay. And I remember once we start putting that into practice, like on the mats during open mats, and in my mind, I kept thinking it has to look this way, but his legs aren't this way. I need his legs to be this way so I can do it this way. And then I think after a couple classes of that, just beat myself up over it. And then going back and looking at my video, I was like, you know what? Just get through. Like you know what to do. Like make him get there, If his legs aren't there, then, there's a way around that too. You're just trying to get the pass. Like the knee cut doesn't have to look like this. Like if the knee cut's not there, but you're still passing, then pass. Because there'll be times where it's like, oh no, there's that knee shield. What do I do? Well, I'm stuck here now. But I felt like there was always just this, like, it has to look like this. If it doesn't look like this, then it's not jiu-jitsu. And then I start questioning my existence. Because like, if I'm not doing jiu-jitsu, then what am I doing? It was like podcasting. But my podcast was about jiu-jitsu. So this is a problem.
Podcasting. It's funny, the pipeline from this pass isn't working to who am I? What is my life worth? And like existential dread. Like we all know the ass whoopings where we just cry in the shower, and it's jiu-jitsu is like, I've been trying to really think about like, how do we research the culture aspect of it? Because the only way that I know how to transfer the experiences is normally like through reels and memes. Like that's why memes is like a memes of communication. It is this like way of saying like, hey, that weird experience that you thought that you only experienced, or maybe you and a couple friends, like it's actually really common. And I think one of the best things about memes in that way, especially for jiu-jitsu, is common humanity. And common humanity is a part of self-compassion. And self-compassion is noticing and recognizing one's own struggles. People think that self-compassion is, oh my God, you're fine. I love you. Just love yourself. Like you've got this. And it's not. And I say that with love because I come from LA. And every once in a while it does pop up and I speak like as if everything is a question. Yeah. And I do like the gravelly voice. So I am a Valley girl at heart, but the whole idea, the whole, I don't even know what I was going to say with that. I got really Valley girl. What was I saying before that?
The compassion, like,
yes. Okay. So common humanity is the way of going, wait, my troubles are not isolated. They are common and they are part of the human condition. And I like to say that we are sometimes afflicted with the human condition because sometimes we're like, why can't it be that easy? I do want to be a robot. I do want to be the one that can remember the exact sequential move that I did last Tuesday. Like I want to remember exactly the third step in this passing sequence that I was taught to regurgitate. And so I get the ego approach for that reason of wanting to fuck around and find out. But there is an aspect that we do need. And like, I look at techniques as expressions of. This is one expression of this pass, right? And when we can think about things in more of an adaptable way, when you say it has to be right, well, one, common humanity says that everyone will, for 50% of people will lose their first match at a competition. So if you're a competitor that actually supposedly eases it. First time I really lost a big one, I remember just running behind the bleachers at Worlds and just crying into my arms and just sitting there in a ball, and Robert Drysdale walking by. I had no idea who he was at the time, just being like, yep, been there before. And it was just like at the time I didn't really care. But then I remember losing another big major, and my coach at the time was like, I literally got so mad. I like took my gi top off. My coach is like, come on, Erin, put it back on. Come on. It's okay. And I'm just having this meltdown inside the barrier. And he's like, look it's Hanette Stack. Do you know who Hanette Stack is? She thinks you're good. And she comes over. Like I was a total little kid, and he had to like calm me down and be like, look at this world champion. She saw your match. It's so good. So that's the whole part of the common humanity. But I do want to speak on the rigidity that you're talking about, because that happens a lot with my clients. Is it has to be a certain way, or I can't advance unless I have the perfect grip, because if I don't, then I'm not prepared for the defense that this person is going to do. If I don't like staple the hips or like shut down this or monitor this, then they might do something that's going to interrupt this, destination that I have in mind, right? And that's why striking was so hard for me, because it felt more like a dance choreography of just like a 1, 1, 2 verse, and I didn't go anywhere. Do you know what I mean? Like usually in jiu-jitsu, for them, besides hand fighting, we are going from either top to bottom or bottom to top, or we're going from being in front of the legs to around the legs, or we're going from being in mount to the back. You know, there's a destination in mind. So it's a lot easier to travel and think about how we're going to get there. And so the rigidity that I see in people is the hesitation, the overthinking, and the doubts in the moment. And this is where that trust comes in. The trust says, I'll figure it out. The trust says, I may not have been here, this exact experience, but trusting your experiences says, well, if I know how to hand fight, for example, or if I know how to keep my balance on top, or if I know where, to grasp the hand around my neck to try to defend it, then we rely on the small tools that we have and the micro battles, rather than simply seeing something as I have to go from here to here and I have to go A, B, C, D, E. And if I miss the C, then it's just not going to happen. As if it's like this, like witchcraft, like we need all of the ingredients. Like we need the hair of a blonde valley girl and we need the toenails of a black tomcat. But being able to tell yourself and believe yourself that you will figure it out when you get there. And that is the true confidence, rather than saying I need to know and map out every single what if, like the information processing theory, then that's usually the issue. But for the most part, it's if you have this main objective, like just do it, like just figure it out, like just grab something and come up, it could be that simple.
Sure. That's sometimes in my mind. Sometimes it's just like one of my coaches, he said, think of it like rock climbing. Your hand, like if you're rock climbing, your hands have to be somewhere. Your feet have to be somewhere. And if you're sitting there, you got a free hand, then what are you doing? Like get somewhere and go. And I try to remember that, but in the moment, I'm just like, hey, so this feels weird. And also, there's the paralysis by analysis. It's the overthinking. It's just like, there's so many different tools I have. Like, which one do I grab? And they have passed me.
Oh yeah, what sucks is that the consequences are often dire, right? Like it's not always like I kind of see it, especially more in passing or even trying to sweep, is that you're like knocking on doors and you're kind of knocking on doors and going, does the knee slice work? Okay, now they have this. All right. What about folder pass? What about leg drag? Like you're kind of going that path of least resistance. Or on bottom, you're like, what if I shift them over here? Do they have balance here? Am I going to off balance them there? Right? You start making them teeter. And then once they start off balancing, you're like, okay, let me chase it up, literally, and get up. But I think that once you have an overall objective and then you have experiences with realistic situations, that is the best way to study and train. It's not full eco, it's not full traditional, but it's both in the sense of having an idea of what it might look like and maybe having 3 cues. Not necessarily the grip has to be here, the grip has to be here. Like, for example, my knee slice that I like to do. And I will always say, I went around the world teaching this knee slice, this flamingo dive knee slice, but I will always say there's 1,000,001 ways to do a knee slice. This is not the only way. And I think that's a hard point to make, because a lot of coaches love to say, if you're my student, then this is the way I want you to do it. Or they really truly believe this is the best way to do it. Or, whatever motivations they have, they want the student to do exactly the way that they do it. And then they create that rigid thinking of, well, this won't work unless I do it exactly. But I like to think of it as motor learning. So motor learning, we have 3 phases. It's the cognitive, where everything is really clunky and you're having to walk yourself through every step, like a game of Twister, right? Right hand red, left hand yellow. And then associative would be where you can minimize it down to like a few cues, right? You might not have to go step by step where like a robot, but it might just be like for a knee slice, it might be leg in between, hand on hip, knee on thigh, right? Or even something more simple. But essentially, those are kind of the way that you would break it down. And I might have some mini battles in there. I might have to break some grips. I might have to step over. I might have to leg weave, right? Certain things. But if I can accomplish those things, then as a whole, then I should be able to get the knee slice. And then you get into the autonomous stage. And the autonomous stage is where you're doing the knee slice while also telling them about your day, where you could be singing a song like we like to do, because I do the same. It is a sign that not only are you regulated like internally, if you have the wherewithal to sing a song while you're in sparring and training, but it shows your ability to, I hate using the word muscle memory, but like essentially that, where it's so programmed that your body feels it and just knows where to go. And that is kind of like the black belt mentality of, you'll get there and you'll know what to do. But for people who genuinely don't or haven't been in certain situations before, they will either panic because the very idea of not knowing what to do makes them psychologically or physiologically aroused or over aroused. And then that can create tunnel vision. It can create a bunch of other issues in terms of emotions. And now, if you didn't think that you knew it before, you certainly don't know it now, because now your body's too busy trying to just like breathe and survive in this like so-called threat that it thinks is happening.
So then I take it then when I'm being attacked and I start singing, I'm regulated and I'm comfortable there.
You're stimming, baby.
Oh, I love to hear it. Yes. All right. It all makes sense now. I always find that with my jiu-jitsu, that is my thing. It's like sometimes I put myself in dangerous spots just because I know that I'm comfortable there. It's like, all right, I'll think to myself, it's like, well, you're not winning this fight though. Like at the very least, you're frustrating the other person to make them like kind of make a mistake. But what if they don't? Like I have one teammate, he sees that, he lets me do it, and then he proceeds to beat the brakes off of me. And I'm like, that didn't work for the 12th time. Maybe the 13th. Maybe we'll get him again next week. So
yeah, right. There's always next time. But that definitely speaks to confidence as well, of confidence turning into complacency. And then complacency turning into, oh no, I'm in danger. I have lost matches that way, where I've been in my guard and I've been in like a reverse De La Riva situation where I have this like ability to like turn into a ball and chain and truly prevent a pass. If I could just like get underneath you and like just sort of like become you if I need to, but that doesn't win fights. It served me a lot at Purple Belt, actually, where I would earn points, but then I'd get tired and then the person might pass. Like I actually won a fight where I got to her back. So I got 4 points and then she passed my guard. And all I had to do was make sure, because it was 4-3, I just had to make sure that she didn't get me on belly, didn't take my back, and didn't submit me. And I did. And so it did serve me in some scenarios, but no one wants to be the guy that just holds on for dear life, right? So I have had internal dialogues during matches. There was a match where I was not feeling myself. I was not feeling great. I was going against someone who was a lower belt than me, who, I liked as a friend. She ended up becoming my client. But I remember being in the match and reverse De La Riva and like just like watching her going, oh, wow, she really wants this. And like she's trying really hard to pass my guard. And I don't think it came from I can't sweep her or I can't do anything to her. I mean, certainly she was strong and pushing in, but I was so complacent that it was almost like I had this dialogue with myself of like, she can have it. I don't feel like expending the energy, or maybe it was a scarcity mindset of like, I have a reputation and I can't lose. And if I were to really try here, I might expose myself and then lose worse. So some people will actually just sort of go, well, it's easier to lose by 2 advantages than it is by opening up and potentially losing by more or a submission, right? But then when you look back at it, I'm like, man, I would much rather, when I look at my clients, I would much rather them lose a match by trying hard and trying new things. Obviously, hopefully it's like not like a final of worlds, but it's just a local tournament, you know, in terms of growth, than to shut down and not try anything, because this is our opportunity to try things. And that kind of brings me to, am I working on developing my ability, or am I working on purely demonstrating it? And when we are going from a demonstration, and that also depends on your environment. So in training, if you find it that way, like if you feel like your coach, when they walk over, it sounds like you wouldn't have this issue, but maybe, but when your coach walks over, there's usually one of two reactions that are more on the two sides of the spectrum. One of them would be, oh, thankfully you're here, because I have so many questions. Like, can you please tell me if I'm doing this right? Versus, oh no, my coach is coming. I need to prove that I can do this. And if I can't, then I'll definitely tell him that that was my bad side. So in one situation, you feel like, please, I am ready to be vulnerable. I am so ready to be vulnerable so that you can expose and help me. And in the right circumstances and environment, it's a very powerful thing, very helpful thing. But you might also have a very ego-centered or highly competitive environment where you feel more judged, and that you have to reach a certain level in order to be considered valuable or useful or worthy of attention, right? Especially when it's an implied thing where the coach only gives attention to people who win or who are super assertive. Could be just as simple as the squeaky wheel gets the grease of like, hey, I need help. But for the most part, if you have a circumstance where your coach or someone that is watching you feels more like they're evaluating you or judging you rather than simply being there to be like, I'm here. Anything that you need, like, I'm here. It can really cause a certain mindset that can transfer over to jiu-jitsu that ends up being low confidence, lack of ability to be vulnerable and handle loss in a way that just feels like it's defining them, and also putting their self-worth within their performances, and identity crisis happening. Or what I went through was identity foreclosure, where all you have in your mind is jiu-jitsu. Like I had a boyfriend, I was in college, I was this, but none of that really, I didn't care. I even wrote about it in a blog, From like White to Purple Belt. Like I was even say like, I got an A on a midterm in one of my classes, and it was like a 300 level class. It felt really cool because I'm not traditionally a good test taker, but once I went into English and I could write essays and stuff and just kind of info dump, it was great. But I remember writing that like that means nothing compared to a gold medal. And if I got an A in the class, which was always hard to do because of my ADHD, I still would always equate a gold medal as more important than so many other things. And there's so many reasons for that. And there's not like one or two, my upbringing, my environment, my whatever. But a lot of people that come to jiu-jitsu, especially trying to be competitive, are more vulnerable to that type of, I don't want to say abuse or exploitation, because it's not like they're necessarily being preyed upon, but they become victim to their own mentality and their own thinking. And when you have people who are so ego oriented and so outcome oriented, but you don't have checks and balances where someone on the outside can be like, hey, I think you're overtraining, or hey, I think you're taking this loss a little too hard. Like, you have a daughter. Isn't that more important? Kinds of things like that. So that would have been beneficial. And that's partly why I do what I do now, because the environments don't necessarily support the nice, good, safe, productive type of learning environments. Not intentionally, not maliciously, they just don't know. And then you have people who take that on to themselves and think that it's their problem or their issue or their fault. And it's really just the environment.
It's kind of like, unfortunately, the nature of the game, I guess, in some ways, where it's like you said, it's unintended. I know that, for myself, and there'll be times I'll do something I feel like, I'm screwing this up they taught this to me. I should know this. Or, I think, there's a point in my mind about not competing. It's like, well, if I go out there and I'm not executing, they're going to be disappointed. And, my coaches have never, ever given me any indication of that, because of like, my scheduling with training and, doing it so sparingly. It's more like they see me on the mat. It's more like, oh my God, Dante's here. We're excited that he's training.
Right. It's a good
Meanwhile,
human.
in my mind, I'm like, oh no, like here I am mounted again. Like, well, I know I'm safe because he can't do anything here. Like, I'm just gonna hang out. But and then it's like, dude, get frames, get out of there.
Right.
Like, oh
right.
shit. Like, okay. But yeah, it's never, at least in our environment where I train at, it's like, it's never been like that. But, I do hear about that from other people where, again, same thing, not in their environment. It's not like that. But, we kind of come together and talk. I was like, yeah, I feel that way too. Like, but our coaches don't make us feel that way. We put it upon ourselves. Say, oh man, I'm screwing up again. And meanwhile, our coach is like, I'm just glad you're out here training and you're trying different things and you're trying the techniques. And we're like, oh, that's
wow.
Oh, that makes sense.
Effort. Yeah. I mean, that's what you need. You need effort over outcomes. But I would say that it doesn't even require an environment that would so-called, cause that type of rigidity. It could come from an internal sense of perfectionism and it could come from trauma. It could be, having a tiger mom, having not enough praise and affirmation for simply who you are, but having that only being tied with performance and then making that assumption that I'm only worth it if I am performing to the level that, this standard that I've set for myself. But it also can come from having your relationship with mistakes. And if mistakes in the past or in other domains of your life have been super costly, think about a surgeon making a mistake if someone dies, right? Like if they are, right, and they happen to train jiu-jitsu, which usually they don't because their fingers, they kind of need good hands for that. But you never know. I haven't really come across too many. But like when we equate the outcome or consequence of what we do as something that feels monumental in the moment, just because it feels that way, even though it isn't, it doesn't matter because our brain sees it that way. And that's our reality. And that's the story we tell ourselves. And so we place a lot of value on productivity. I mean, that just, if you want to talk societal level, that's just capitalism in general. So that's like obviously an influence on all of us. But I would say that, and this is something that I've been trying to study. I actually started reading a book that I can't understand for the life of me on scale development in terms of psychometric properties of how do you like create a standardized assessment that could quantify the qualities of a jiu-jitsu culture. And my joke has always been, well, if you think about the spectrum between like modern of like, we don't line up, we don't even like more 10th planet, like we smoke weed on the mat versus I bow to dead pictures of dead guys on the wall. Like that would be the spectrum. And I would love to study whether the rigidity shows up more in what I call sterile environments where it's very militant, or maybe there's not a lot of like music and expression, but more soldier-like, because there's varying degrees of it, right? My first gym wasn't any major affiliation, but the people that I trained under were Gracie Baja, and eventually it became a Gracie Baja. So with Gracie Baja, it's very much like, we have the same curriculum and you wear the same gis and there's a lot of assimilation. And it's great for marketing. It's great for someone opening their own gym because I feel like you just like sign on the dotted line. They're like, here's all the pictures you're going to hang on the wall. Here's all the gis you're going to wear. Here's the full package. Like here's your jiu-jitsu, gym starter kit. Here's your website that looks like all the others. Just kind of put in your name and whatever. But that kind of sterile thing, like says that you have to act in line. And then you have some gyms that will have a unified warm-up and some don't. Some will have a lineup. Some the line will be fully like the black belt will be here and the other black belt will be there. And then if you're a white belt, you're the furthest physically away from the instructor. Some gyms will have it in lines where the black and brown belts are in the front, where the white belts are in the back, right? And so just like the implications of that, of like, I'm worth less, right? So when you look at the way that hierarchy is, and then you also have the closure. Like I used to have, for example, Corbinos was like, if the closer you are to him, the higher the belt you are. And unless there was a huge class, it was like wrapping around or whatever. But for the most part, it was lining up before, lining up after, shaking hands, clapping, very, very formal. Marcelo's was, as soon as the class started, he would say, okay, guys, start running in belt order. And you would just literally just like get in line. So it was still belt order in terms of when we would do the lines for the warm-ups. But I think that was more strategic because then the people who are more apt to show how it's done. So you wouldn't be in the first of the line and still be a white belt. You would be like, do you know what I mean? Like you'd have someone to follow. And at the end, it was never, ever an actual lineup, ever. It was just you would clap wherever you were. You'd be like, okay, guys, end of class, and you'd clap. And that was it. And then you could volunteer, which most people did, to line up and shake Marcelo's hand or whoever was teaching the class. And so when you have like a very formatted, structured approach, it signals to someone, especially if there are gi requirements. At some gyms, they don't allow certain colors, or they even require you to wear a belt for no gi and your gi pants, things like that. So however, and this is also performative, right? Like how performative is it versus practical? How much is it a mentality of lineage where I'm the black belt, what I say goes, right? So then there's also the coach-athlete relationship. And is there also a distinction between how people who compete or who are full-time get treated versus someone who walks in the door? And how comfortable is someone asking questions? Because it's never implicit it's never explicit where a coach is going to be like, hey, that was stupid. Don't do that. I mean, I wouldn't say ever, because I'm sure there is, even if it's in, being facetious or humor, it still stings. But for the most part, it's quiet and insidious, where I will be at a seminar at a gym asking for questions, and a good, I guess, emotionally, psychologically safe environment would be where people are raising their hands and asking questions, because they're not afraid of looking dumb, and they understand that the things that they're asking might be applicable to someone else. Common humanity, right? Maybe other people are struggling with the same thing. But if there's even a smidgen of a chance that person might be judged, even a look or like a comment or whatever, then people don't say anything. And what I find is that all of a sudden, after you're like, okay, 1, 2, 3, and everybody goes and disperses, now everyone has their questions. And now I'm bringing everyone back in going, this person had a great question. I think everybody would understand that this is a good question, and I'm going to address this to everybody. So that's kind of what I'm really interested in. And it doesn't serve me, because what I do is one-on-one client work. And if I'm working with a blue belt, they don't necessarily have the autonomy or agency in those environments to speak up, because they're not seen as valuable unless they're competing and they're winning, or they're paying exorbitant amount of money to get privates or whatever. And so there's a lot of environments that prevent people from being able to get out of their hesitation, out of their overthinking, out of their imposter syndrome, out of their perfectionism, because their environment has created it. So you have this mishmash of, childhood traumatic experiences and environment and your disposition and your personality traits and everything else. So it's very hard to tell someone exactly a cookie cutter way of getting through something, because it's so dependent on their biopsychosocial aspects.
Yeah, thinking about it that way too. Like as you're kind of going through the descriptions of all of this, I'm thinking about my gym, and I'm trying to my gym's all over the place though. It's like we have a uniform policy where we wear white. It could be any brand gi, but it's all white, which I don't like because I bleed a lot sometimes. So I'm like, great. Like I wear a colostomy bag. So sometimes, if I forget to put my brace on and
Oh,
I get bumped, I'm like, oh, okay.
oh,
It looks like I
yeah,
got to sit out and not run another white gi because, you know, blood.
yeah.
But, we have that. But then we also have, where it's like we have music going and it, any variety of music. And, so it's like pretty free flowing there, but then we have the lineup, where it's like higher ranks up front, lower ranks in the back. But then even with that, it's like we're all still very like open and free to like, intermingle and discuss and ask questions. So it's like I'm like, whoa, like
It's
in my
interesting.
mind, I'm like, I want to be one or the other. Like we feel like
Our brain
a
wants that. Yeah.
like we're pot of goulash right now, and it's like
Hmm.
we're everything. But at
Hmm.
the same time, though, I like for me, I do appreciate that because it's like there's some uniform to it in terms of like there's order, but there's also freedom within that order.
Yes.
Like I don't feel like like I hear of these things, but I don't know that I've ever encountered it. I guess maybe I do encounter it. They just don't really speak on it. I guess probably too often because the many people who've come onto the podcast, for the most part, it's like I've had several people train at Gracie Baja, and I hear not from folks train there, but I hear like people who have trained there. It's like, hey, it felt very rigid, or it felt this way or that way. And I'm like, huh, well, it doesn't look that way. It doesn't. But I'm also not in that pool, so it's like I don't know. But meanwhile, if I explain my gym, people can be like, "Oh, y'all can only wear white. That sounds really limiting." It's like, I mean, maybe, but the pictures look really pretty. So, we look good when we out there. Especially if you got some color on your belt. Oh yeah, you're it.
Right.
Um, but I don't know. I think there is a lot of um stuff that we bring our own baggage with a lot of that too. Because even when I'm looking at it, it's like, okay, well, I like that we have freedom. I like though that there is a little bit of uniform there, but then I start overthinking it in my mind too. Though it's like, well, like how much freedom do we have? It's like, I mean, enough freedom for they let me pick the music one time, but that was a mistake. So,
One
like,
time you got the ox.
yeah, like it was like we had a coach filling in. He was like, "Hey, like, do you have your phone?" And I did, and I had my iPod though. I was like,
Oh my
"Oh," I
God.
was like, "Go ahead, put some music on." So I put on Wu-Tang. And the problem with the Wu-Tang that I put on is like I didn't. It was skits in there too. So
Wasn't the
I think
vibe.
they're like three skits in a row. And I was like, there is no music here, but there's Old Dirty Bastard saying a lot of words that we probably shouldn't have children here. There weren't any kids in there, but I was just like, man, I'm glad kids class is over now. But
Hmm.
I never got that opportunity again. I was like, man,
Yep. Wonder
well,
why.
there went my privileges.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's something also. It's like what kind of music and what music and who gets to control all of those things and how much autonomy do people have? And do you have to bow on and off, or is it a choice? Are you like really what it comes down to are what are the societal or cultural norms, right? Cultural norms are the kind of thing where you are visiting an academy and some purple belt goes, we remember, wear your shoes. You got to wear shoes here, right? And you're like, sorry, I didn't know, or I can't read the million signs. Or someone will go, hey, like maybe you shouldn't talk that much because he doesn't like when you talk that much, right? Or someone just sort of letting you know that aren't necessarily the formal rules, but like, hey, this is like, we don't do that here, or we do this here. And so what I'll get nervous about oftentimes is when I go to a gym, and usually if I teach seminars, the people will be like, do whatever you want. It's your thing. And I'm like, no, you do what you do. And then I'll do the teaching. And is it like, are we lining up? Are we just huddling? Am I just going to yell from here? Are we going to sit? We're going to stand. Do we clap on 2? Do we clap on 3? Do we like, what do we do here? Right. And it's totally just like, those are the societal norms. And I think that the unwritten societal norms are really key, because if they are not made explicit, then now you are relying on your own, if you're a business owner or a head coach, you are relying on your students to clue the other people in. Part of that can be done by social modeling, right? Like, and social modeling is where you're watching for the cues. So for example, I had a client go recently in a tournament and she got into the bullpen, and we talked about how the bullpen is this like awful place where, you know, you can't go to the bathroom even though you're an adult, and like you can't really do anything because you're just literally sitting there with your opponents. And she got into the venue and the bullpen feeling really good, excited, happy. And she got into the bullpen, looked over at her opponents and wanted to say hi. And they all had their headphones in, all locked in, all serious, all, you know. And immediately you're going to say, is that what we're supposed to do? If I'm the odd man out and I see everyone else being like serious, it's like, it's the same as like walking into a classroom and everybody's sitting on the desks and, you know, and chatting, and you're like, cool, I'm gonna go chat it up, versus going in and everyone's seated and perfect. And, you know, oh God, the teacher's going to come in at any second, you know, like I think of Matilda, right? Trunchbull versus Miss Honey.
Watch a lot of Matilda in this house.
Yeah, it's a great movie. So it's the societal norms. And here I am like putting on my researcher science practitioner hat. That's like, how do we measure that? And is there a relationship or a causation or correlation between the strictness, we'll say, or, you know, I could say, you know, the way that I'm going to judge it would be different. It could be ego oriented versus outcome, or versus mastery oriented, process oriented versus outcome oriented, traditional versus non-traditional, whatever scale I decide to kind of judge it as. Does that predict certain outcomes, right? And does that type of environment create rigidity? Does it create perfectionism? Does it create stress, unnecessary stress on the mental well-being of athletes who compete? Because now they're not only fighting just to test out their jiu-jitsu, now they feel like there's something on the line, and there might be punishment and consequences if they lose versus real gains if they win, or consequences. And so that's really, really interesting to me. And you don't need to compete to be not a victim. That's pretty harsh, but to, you know, not negatively affected by your environment. Because I have had people that don't compete that are my clients that just want to learn how to enjoy it again and not stress out over performing in their own gym and trying to present themselves in a way that is an impression management, where they're afraid of like being like, yeah, I'm a purple belt, but like I just got passed by a blue belt. And do you see how if it's a very hierarchy heavy place and you're standing in line, you might have this rigid thinking of, if I'm a purple belt, I have to beat all the blue and white belts. And if I don't, then it's a personal failing on my end. And if I look at the left and I look at the brown belts and the black belts, I'm not supposed to beat them. And if I do, it's not because I'm good, it's because they gave it to me. So do you see how that can mess with our confidence, our competence, our ability to even try, our self-efficacy, all of those things? And so a lot of what I do ends up becoming validation and being like, honey, that's not you. Like, it's not you. It's not your fault. This is just the way that the environment, the culture is, or these like insidious expectations, like that this is the reason you feel like you're going to disappoint your coach, even though they flat out can grab you by the face and go, I like you no matter what, you know, like we will still feel that way. And so those types of aspects of sport are so interesting to me, not in terms of sport in general, but in terms of our sport, which is unregulated. We're not part of the International Olympic Committee. We're not sort of standardized in any way. And there's a lot of egos rampant. And that's probably the reason why that's not happening, because we'd have to actually agree on a rule set. And they might look at it as mine's better. No, mine's better. But also there's no one that wants to step up and be a true governing body a nonprofit governing body that doesn't have a profit at stake, right? A nonprofit who genuinely only exists, and there's a board of directors, you do it the right way. We don't have that. And so we don't have a standardization, and we don't have a resource for people who deal with abuse or, certain things that safe sport could potentially think. But if you look at the safe sport, I'm sure there are people in jiu-jitsu that belong on there, but because jiu-jitsu is not recognized in the IOC or the Olympic Committee, it is not on there. And therefore we don't qualify for having people banned or being held accountable with punitive action, for their behavior. And so, we don't have a reporting structure. We don't have any of that. So we don't have that accountability. And the only accountability we have is social. And that is in the form of the McDojo page, which calls people out and, tries to make it known where we have predators. But that's it. There's usually no criminal liability there. And oftentimes the IBJJF will still champion people who could be potentially held criminally liable for things. And so that's where, my whole thing goes into abuse and other things. But we'll keep it positive, and we'll keep it to the point of, good coaching. It doesn't necessarily come down to, education necessarily. Sometimes it just comes down to having an ethical understanding of the limitations, that you are not a therapist, you are not a marriage counselor, you are not a financial whatever. And that even though people will, like myself who did this, I had daddy issues. So therefore my professor is, on the pedestal, where you look to that person to either define you or give you the worth and the pride that you're looking for in yourself. And so what, I guess, to sum this whole up is like your environment can make you outsource your confidence, which is unreliable, unsustainable, unrealistic.
Yeah. Thinking about, I was going to ask the question of like, what can coaches do to, make the environment welcoming? If I don't know, like I said, I only have the experience with one gym. So it's like, I always feel like, wow, it's very, very inviting. But then I also think too, is like, well, what about gyms where it's not very, it feels kind of cold and it feels just very, just not accepting. But at the same time, though, the coach has to be aware of that, I guess. And, in order to fix the problem, you have to know that there is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, how do we get to, that point? If you ever get to that point, with a facility, because again, there's some coaches that's like, this is the only way to do it. And we've had results doing it this way. And and it's like, I mean, yeah, but also now you got your athletes who are, starving themselves to make the weight cut, or, if they don't win by submission, they're beating themselves up because they won,
but it wasn't good enough.
Submission. Yeah. It's like, it could have been better. It's like, geez, like,
oh yeah, I was in that trap for sure. I had coaches that way. We could always do better. We could always do more. Okay. It was a rat race, but that leads to burnout. That leads to overtraining. And something that people don't understand about burnout is that it's not just, maybe I'm overdoing it and I'll just step away from it for a bit. A break is good. It's a start. But if you go back to the same environment that caused the burnout in the first place, it will be cyclical. And if it doesn't get addressed, that it's the environment, you will automatically think that it is you. And you will take that on and you will assume that it's something that you're doing wrong. And then you'll take this a la carte approach. Well, let me tweak this. What if I do this differently? What if I do this differently? And now you're just taking stabs at it for wishful thinking rather than looking at it in a systemic approach of what are the stressors? What are the limitations or situations that you're under that are causing these negative experiences, right? And so what I end up doing, yes, I am hired for people who want to win better, whatever, like to be better at their performances. But what ends up happening is we talk about their well-being. And when you cater to their well-being, it creates the optimal performance. And when you get to a point where you have someone who is acting out authentically, and what I mean by that is not authentic in the sense of I have to wear my pink gi, but acting in line with their values, what they truly believe, even if the values are different than what your coach might say or think. That's really hard, especially if you're a kid. I have some kids like that in environments like that. But also that you act out what you're feeling and that you don't suppress yourself too much. Like obviously there's a time and a place, right? We can't always burst out in tears on the mat. I did that a lot. Eventually it turned into crying in the shower, crying in the bathroom, whatever, crying when it was over. But there is a level of, if you deny yourself or numb yourself to your own emotional feelings to cater to the environment or the job you trying to get done, whether it's a world title or just getting through your first role in a training session, like you deny yourself, you erode that self-trust that is required to do great things.
Yeah. That all kind of, as you're saying, it's like, oh man, I'm hearing a lot of Dante in here. That was the whole trick here. Where Dante's having a therapy session right now.
That's exactly it, right? I got to help you like wake up and look at the systems in place, like wake up, Dante, just like figure it out now. But like, if you understand that it is not an individual's problem to fix the culture of jiu-jitsu, not that it needs fixing, but you know what I mean? Like there are some situations, or to make it better, it doesn't lie on one person's shoulders. Like it's not one person's burden. But I have found that these little communities of people who care about the emotional well-being and the mental well-being of people, the psychological health, is those people end up banding together and creating more of a standard, and when you hold other people accountable, it creates a situation where the people who are benefiting from the environment being the way it is no longer benefit, right? No war but class war, God damn it. I guess that's where I'm at. But everybody has to be involved. And if we look at the gym across the street as a sole competitor, and that they're the enemy, right? Or we go into a competition thinking we need the team points at all costs just so that we can show that we're better than the other gyms, right? Instead of thinking, how can these communities band together and create a resource for their students without having the scarcity mindset of us versus them? So on the grander scale, it ends up being like, why can't we think of community? Why is it so hyper competitive? Why is it so just like people can't work together? Because they think of this scarcity of like, what's mine is mine. Or if I pour into you and you leave, then you're a creonch and you're a traitor, and all of these things that are not conducive to a healthy, psychologically safe environment. So we have a lot of egos and we have a lot of people acting out their issues on the mat, which I might have not gotten my ADHD diagnosis if I hadn't started training jiu-jitsu. I was diagnosed at 22. So the mat reveals things, right? And you will keep in the same cycle if you do not understand that you are in a cycle, right? And sometimes we are our own worst enemy, but the environment can both grow that or it can stifle it. And so it really comes down to finding a place that you feel that you have people that you can be authentic with, meaning that no matter your performances, your losses, your moods, your whatever, they see the core of you and they allow you to be human. It really comes full circle to, we are human beings with emotions and fears and programming that has influenced us for so long that it really needs to be that I see you as a human, not as a body, not as like oh, you're a purple belt, like that's what you are, like you're less than me because I'm a black belt or whatever, that you're only useful if you're a good training partner. Like this inclusivity, jiu-jitsu is a place for anyone, not everyone, I will say. But the people that do come in that are willing to be in vulnerable situations and try this thing that's really, really hard, that may feel like they're exposing themselves, like we need to create a good environment for these people who are trying really hard and doing a crazy thing of sweating with random dudes. You know, back to the whole humor of the zoom out, like, yes, this is heavy stuff and, you know, really cool stuff that I'm talking about, but in general, like it's just jiu-jitsu as well.
Yeah. Yeah. When you kind of narrow it down, jiu-jitsu is kind of a silly thing, really. You know, like when I explain it to friends and family, like they look at me like, what? Why? Like, why do you do that? Like, you know, it's like, I'm the sweaty guy at the gym. So I was like, yeah, you know, I was wrong with this one guy. And like, you know, I leaned over and like a bucket of sweat fell on his face. And they're like, and you're laughing about this? Well, we were both laughing. Like, why? That sounds gross.
Because if you don't laugh, you cry. And you cry the same tears, right? Because then it's like you're sweating in my eye and we're just sharing a lot of biological, you know, specimens. Yeah, it's crazy what we do. But the more that we can kind of zoom out and go, this is a crazy thing, we don't take ourselves too seriously. In the end, I think it creates a healthier environment for everybody to learn something that is inherently not meant to be mastered. Right? It's not meant to be mastered. I'm a black belt. This year will be 8 years as a black belt, which is crazy. No, yeah, 8 years. I got my black belt in 2017, and it took me 8 years to get my black belt. So it'll be time spent at black belt is the same amount of time it took me to get to black belt. And I can tell you, I'm not an expert. I'm not a master. There are so many things that I don't know that I want to get better at. And, you know, the glass is half full kind of thing is I'm going to focus on all the things that I get to learn and not the things that I have to learn. I'm going to look at all the opportunities there are for me to continuously be engaged and stimulated by gaining knowledge in this sport and not feeling like there's an end to it, but also feeling like, wow, there's such a huge gap between where I am and where I want to be. And it really, it comes down to a choice of what you want to focus on. Do you want to be, you know, demotivated by the gap between where you are and where you want to be, like looking up at the end of the stairs versus just looking at one step at a time and going, this is cool. I like the steps. I take it for what it is. I take it for what it is. I take it for what it is, you know? That's just classic mindset training, right? And remembering that you do have a choice. We do have lots of choices. We make lots of choices, but you can't believe that until you start taking accountability and realize that your choices and your actions actually have consequences, which that's a whole nother ball game where people are like, that wasn't me. That was the curb wasn't there just like 3 seconds ago. Just get my Starbucks, run into every curb in the parking lot. Oops, you know, like that's a whole nother ball game. So I do what I do with people that are willing to do what I do, you know, but there are plenty of people who are not ready to work with me. There are plenty of people who shouldn't work with me. And there's a lot of people who definitely should.
Absolutely. Yeah, just looking at that, it all kind of as a big ball. It's like, you know what? Ultimately, it's us, you know?
Yeah.
Like, well, in my case, my wife, I considered quitting many years ago. And my wife was like, you can't quit because, again, like we were talking before, you know, we start recording, idle hands. I need a hobby. I need something to do. So it's like, you seem so much more pleasant when you're getting beat up by other dudes. Yeah. It's like that. Wait, what?
I
why
love
would you
that.
say it that way?
Even she knows, right? Just like go do your thing. go get sweaty and roll around and rub up on other people so that you're more tolerable. Please.
I always tell her, it's like, look, I'm just in it for the hugs. It's like, do you need a hug? Well, I mean, yeah, but I need like a
aggressive one.
An aggressive hug.
I need you to fight me while I hug you.
Like, well, she understands the value of underhooks. Like, she comes in for the hug. I'm like, nope, we're not doing this today. Like,
That's
what are
a
you
beautiful
trying to
thing.
do?
It's a powerful thing. Yeah. Life and jiu-jitsu, so artfully synonymous.
Yes. So, Erin, thank you very much for this. I'm sitting here looking at my questions. It's like every time I went to a question, you beat me to, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, I don't even need to do this.
That's winning, buddy. Did I win?
Like, you're a pro at this. It's like you've done enough pod where you're like, I know where he's going next. It's like, well, she beat me there. All right. Well, I got this one. Well, no. I made this question up this morning. Like, okay, she beat me there too. So, but thank you for doing this. I'd love to have you back on and talk more, because this, like, I think it's eye opening. And there, other things where I was just start thinking, I was like, you know what? I think I want to ask this was like, like we've missed the boat, so we'll come back to it another time. So I'd love to have you back on. If that works for you. Absolutely. I have much to yap about. And then if you want to make it more formatted next time, I'm down. I can take it either way, but yeah, I mean, if you want to make it a true session, I'll send you some assessments beforehand, and then we could dig deep and have everybody know exactly where your pain points are. You know what? I think we might. Let's talk about. I would love to do that. To be honest, what do you got? There's nothing to hide, honestly. I'm open to being I'm a very open person. I let people know. If you ask me a question, I'm always going to answer it truthfully. I like. There's always this thing about embarrassment. My co-host with my other show always asks every other episode. He asks the same question. Mind you, we review beers, so by this point he's probably drunk, and he'll ask the same question. And last week I finally just called it. I was like, "Did you ask that last week?" And he'll ask, what's your most embarrassing moment? Oh my god, and so many. I don't necessarily go under the ideal like it's impossible to embarrass me. I'm human. We're all human. But I think that's why sometimes I feel like I'm so open, and I don't think of embarrassment in that way. I think of it just like it happened. If I trip and stumble, I, make a joke of it. Almost died there, but we're okay. Keep it moving. That's the humor. Yeah. That's the levity. Yeah. So, I'd be more than willing to do that, because like I said, I'm an open book. If you're like, Dante, so let's get to this one. It's like, look, I had mommy issues. So, real talk. Like, I'm looking for a gym with the female head coach. Like, I need to be, told that, I'm doing great. Yeah, absolutely. Actually, probably why like my relationship with my wife goes where it goes. Go. Like, you know what? You ate all the food on your plate today. Here's a star. Oh, she validates you. That's what we need, though. Sometimes we need that external validation. I mean, we can't lean on it, obviously, but no. But I mean, it definitely helps, right? Just let me know I'm headed in the right direction, please. That's all I ask. Right? It's like, am I at least like halfway, like close to being right? If not, tell me so I don't keep going wrong. Exactly. And that goes back to the guiding and the facilitating and the, like, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm just here to let you know, like, this is what you should be bringing out of yourself. Like, and it's within, right? But yeah, next time, let me know. I will definitely put you in the hot seat. And I can, think about ways that I can bring in some of the activities that I do with my clients and have yourself some breakthroughs and let other people learn in the process. It'd definitely be good for my business. Absolutely. I think it'd be a fun listen for the listeners themselves, and informative for myself, so that way I can be like, oh, okay, that's what that meant, huh? Always wonder why, like, I always have to tape my my ring finger on my right hand 6 times and then, take my left knee 4 times. It's like, buddy, that's OCD.
I was going to say, I don't do diagnoses, but it
You
does
got
sound
other
pretty.
things here to deal with. Like,
Yeah.
go talk to your other therapist.
Right. And, I do have a lot of clients that work in therapy and they give me the diagnosis. I'm like, cool, this is what we're working with. This is cool. I can't diagnose and I can't treat in that way, but it definitely is informative. Right. So
Yes,
I meet people where they're at. So next time we will definitely do that. I really appreciate you having me on. I really appreciate being able to kind of talk about my stuff and my thing and having the platform. So, and not having to do the editing myself. I just go on everybody else's podcast and then I get to leave and it's great. It's why I do my seminars. I don't have my own gym. I'm like, cool. Did what I had to do. I'm outie.
The information still gets out there. So
exactly. I'm just a messenger.
Before we go, you have any shout outs or mentions that you'd like to leave the listeners with? Where can we find you at? Social medias, websites, links, anything like that?
Yeah. You can go to my website, erinherle.com. You'll see kind of the bio information, how to book a call with me. You'll also, if you say the work with me part, you'll see my Resilient Athlete program, which is a 5-session program that I work with for combat sports athletes specifically. If you happen to not be in sport at all, or just a high performing professional, or know someone, you can go to highmentalperformance.com, which is my transfer into high performance, high stakes, high pressure situations and professionals. Otherwise, my Instagram is probably the best way to find me. I'm always on there. I'm addicted, which is my name at Erin Herle. And then I also have another Instagram for my consulting business called Train Ya Mind, YA, Train Ya Mind. And that's on there as well. I have a few things coming down the pipe in terms of camps that I'm going to be teaching for prep, some collaborations. I did release a book. It's called If You're Not Laughing, You're Losing. It's a very small little guide on how to use effort or use humor as a mental performance skill. So that's also out there. And I produce content on my website and blogs. So lots of information if you want to dig into the work that I do. More people, I think, need to understand the importance of the mental aspect in performance, but also in training and enjoyment and just simple emotional and physical and psychological well-being. So I'm always here to talk, to rant, to yap, to talk to people on the sidelines when I should be rolling. It is just what I do. So it is part of my life. So I just love helping others.
Awesome. I'll be sure to put all the links in the show notes and have everybody, give everybody that access.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
And as always, to the listeners, thank you. If you got any questions, concerns, criticisms, please feel free to reach out. You can find me at bjj.wiki on Instagram or Off the Mats Podcast, also on Instagram. I want to give a real quick shout out to my crew over there at Nerd Rage Radio. We just crossed 500. We'll be on 500 at this point because I've been saying this for weeks now. So we're like 504 probably. But Bobby, Chris, Joe, Marilyn, Phil, Ricky, Tiki, all those guys over there, we love you. If it wasn't for Nerd Rage Radio, I wouldn't be doing the podcast. So thank you to them. If you love it, thank them. If you hate it, blame them. I also want to shout out my other podcast. So you like horror. If you like scary movies, go check it out. We talk about scary stuff, y'all. So if you like it, go check it. I'm on Instagram as well. So you like horror. All the words separated by underscores. That's why I said it that way. I might be able to go fix that, though. I don't know why I did it that way. So I'm going to go look into maybe changing it. But either way, go check it out. We're doing remakes versus originals this year. So if you want to find out about The Thing from Another World versus John Carpenter's The Thing, go check that out. The Nightmare on Elm Street from 1984 versus 2009, go check it out. We got it coming up for you. Otherwise, so you like horror. It's wherever you find all your other podcasts like this. And last but not least, I want to give a big shout out to our guest here, Coach Erin Herle. And we'll go with Coach. Yeah, you're coaching me today, so we're gonna go with Coach okay. Erin Herle today.
I like that.
Thank you very much, and I can't wait to have you back on and have another chat and dig deeper and find out. Let everybody see what's going on, out there, and see you at work.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much.
No problem. And thank you to the listeners again. You know what it is. You guys keep listening. We're going to keep making these shows. Thanks, everybody. And good night. Ciao.
Deeper with it. Now let me sing a song.